Alright, Eagles punter Aaron Sipos is officially gone with the Birds signing Braden Mann to the practice squad, but it may not be a big upgrade after all. And Avonte Maddox is officially out, so who did head coach Nick Sirianni allude to as the new nickel? And why is this 3-time All-Pro worth a look? Plus, the reason we shouldn't worry about Jalen Hurts' shaky start. But first, let's run it. Hey guys, so let's start with the fantastic news that all of us wanted to hear, that the Eagles have a new punter. After the Eagles announced they are signing former Steelers and Jets punter Braden Mann to the practice squad and releasing Aaron Sipos. And all I can say is, it's about time, although it depends on who you ask as to if this is actually a good signing, since the Jets drafted Mann in the 6th round of the 2020 NFL Draft after receiving All-American honors at Texas A&M and winning the Ray Guy Award for the nation's top collegiate punter in his junior year, where PFF also graded Mann as the 4th best punter a season ago. However, the punt runts say the 25-year-old finished 24th in punter EPA, or expected points added, where Greg also argues that this isn't an upgrade over Sipos, saying, "I don't agree with PFF's grades here, and my view is that Mann probably has a bit bigger leg than Sipos, but also has as many or more bad punts. Ultimately, competition is good, and I'll take it, but not excited." Alright, that's fair. I guess I can understand that point of view, yet I can't help getting excited about the change of scenery, because we've seen more than enough to realize Sipos wasn't it. However, it's not like the Birds are completely sold on Braden, since I'd imagine he's going to come in with the same type of 2 to 3 game tryout situation, and then we'll see what he can do from the practice squad, which means, like Outside the Birds said, guys like Blake Gillikin, possibly Pat O'Donnell, or even Colby Wadman, who the Eagles have all worked out, could eventually wind up on the roster, serving as an unofficial Philly punter bullpen of sorts. Okay, look, I'm definitely in favor of competition, but if Mann isn't the solution, I'm not exactly looking to play a game of punter carousel, because as money as Jake the Great is, I don't want to necessarily start messing up the holding game or have him start second guessing anything, especially since without Jake we would have lost to the Patriots, and who knows how the Minnesota game would have turned out. Obviously, it's not the best plan to rely on your kicker so much, plus remember, Jalen hates it.
Give a lot of credit to Jake Elliott. I don't like him kicking.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd all prefer to get 6 points instead, but how do you guys feel about the new punter acquisition and any concerns shaking things up for Jake or Jalen's play as well, since we're talking about him? Because let's be honest, Hurts hasn't been as great as we'd like for him to be. Not seeing the field as well, showing some shaky judgment, and committing a couple poor turnovers in both games. But like Reuben Frank said, it happens. We've seen it all over the league the first 2 weeks of the season. Patrick Mahomes and the mighty Chiefs offense are averaging 18 points per game. Josh Allen threw 3 picks against the Jets, and Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford, who squared off in a Super Bowl just 18 months ago, have 2 of the lowest passer ratings in the league. However, on the positive side, Jalen's made enough plays in big moments to get the Eagles to 2-0 for only the 7th time since 1993, and he's got the highest completion percentage by an Eagles QB after 2 games since Randall Cunningham in 1992, which is why the whole Hurts regressing like Carson Wentz comments are pretty ridiculous. And like head coach Nick Sirianni referenced in his presser, it's an incredibly small sample size to overreact.
I don't know what we're yelling about!
At the same time, I think we all realize we could be a little bit better, especially the play calling, where Bleeding Green Nation released their way too early coaching report card, saying the confidence level in Desai is increasing because you can't reasonably ask a coach to do significantly better with what he's had and, just as importantly, not had at his disposal. His unit is punching its weight, which is good enough for the time being. Yet on the flip side, Brian Johnson is making Dave Mangles rethink his stance on how important Shane Steichen was to the offense last year, reminding that BJ did have 3 seasons as a play caller in college. However, none of those seasons were anything to be proud of, as Utah's head coach Kyle Whittingham admitted he put Johnson into the role too soon. And at Houston, the offense went from 26th to 65th in scoring. Granted, the Cougars did lose Eagles legend Greg Ward at QB, so I don't blame you if you want to chalk up the regression to that loss there. Either way, the concern level is certainly rising for the OC, but the good news is he's got extra time to prep for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. Hopefully, we start seeing a little better flow and trust between him and Jalen, but if we come away from next week's game seeing the same issues, I'm going to be a little more than worried. Speaking of concern, Avonte Maddox did officially have surgery on his torn pec and is for sure out for the regular season, although some seem to think there's a small possibility he could return in the postseason. Regardless, now the Birds defense has another hole to fill at the slot corner position, and I'd agree with Josh Tolentino that All-Pro James Bradberry is the most likely candidate to fill that void, despite Bradberry playing exclusively on the outside over his 8-year career. As we know, defensive coordinator Sean Desai experimented quite a bit with with JB in the slot during camp, even saying earlier during camp that the nickel is a marquee position and that type of player needs specialized training, which is why Philly designated Ronell Williams as the nickel cornerback coach. In case anyone's curious, that's the first time the Birds have made that position an exclusive role. Of course, as Tolentino said, the expectation was Bradberry would line up against specific tight ends such as the Vikings' TJ Hawkinson, the Chiefs' Travis Kelce, and the Giants' Darren Waller, with coaches favoring Bradberry's size, lengthy frame, and his physicality enforced at the line of scrimmage. But with McPherson and Maddox now sidelined, Bradberry's move to the inside could come sooner than expected and on a full-time basis, or at least for this season. Well, it better be for the season unless Howie Roseman goes out and signs someone, because I'm not ready to say Mario Goodrich is the answer, but who is ready to say that? With the 23-year-old handling the majority of the snaps after Maddox went down, being targeted 6 times for 6 receptions and giving up a touchdown. Now, yes, he did get thrown in there all of a sudden, but I've seen all that I need to. The question is, who would Howie go out and sign or trade for? I know a lot of the immediate reaction is go get Budda Baker from the Cards, but like I've talked about a couple different times, I don't see that as a likely possibility, and I feel like Howie is more inclined to go grab a vet off the street and try to make that work. So maybe a guy like 2-time All-Pro Casey Hayward, perhaps? Although at 34 years old and coming off a shoulder injury last season, it's hard to know what he might be able to provide. How about another former All-Pro in Chris Harris? Since, like PFF's Ben Cooper wrote, the slot was, and maybe still is, Harris's domain. He thrived from the inside, particularly while with the Broncos from 2011 to 2019. No slot cornerback earned a higher grade than Harris in that span, a 94.6, and only one outside cornerback, Richard Sherman, did so. Harris, who enters the 2023 season as a free agent after joining the Saints in 2022, has never shied away from run defense or tackling. Since 2011, Harris leads the NFL in stops with 221. And according to Ed Cracks, this is the most obvious thing to do after the Eagles put Maddox on IR, since at 34, Harris is a veteran who can at least bring some experience to a young group of backups. Alright, honestly, I wouldn't mind either of those options at slot, and it wouldn't surprise me to see Howie make a move there. Although Sirianni's alluded to being happy with the guys he's already got in-house.
I will say that we have good options, that we feel like we have really good options there. And we've worked, with many different guys, not just James, but many different guys right there. And so, and I'm as bummed as I am for Avonte and for the team to lose Avonte, I am excited for other guys to get an opportunity on the, in there as well.
Okay, obviously not going to give anything away for the Bucs game, but if Sirianni likes the options on the current roster, it doesn't seem like another guy would be a better fit than JB in the slot. But which way are y'all leaning? Sure, I guess you could argue putting Eli Ricks in the slot, or maybe Akili Ringo in that role is an option as well. Personally, I feel like Ricks is too good on the outside, and if Joe were to struggle or we had another injury to him or Slay, I think you want and need Ricks to be there already. Thankfully, as far as injuries are concerned, Sirianni said it's trending in the right direction for running back Kenny Gainwell, as well as James Bradberry and safety Reed Blankenship to be able to play on Monday, which is great news, and hopefully they're good to go. However, all due respect to Kenny G, but I'd rather see a heavy dose of DeAndre Swift.
Whoa, I said it with all due respect. No, that doesn't mean you get to say whatever you want to say to me.
Sorry, I mean, come on. Agent Zero just had the most rushing yards in a game for the Eagles in 10 years. Unfortunately, though, despite Swift's big game in week 2, Sirianni said he feels confident in all the running backs on the roster, and how they utilize guys going forward is going to be different each week. Look, I love them too, I just don't want to see them out there equally. Swift needs to get as many snaps as he can, and the same could be said for Jalen Carter, who's recorded the 3rd most pressures in the NFL behind Micah Parsons and Aiden Hutchinson. The only difference is the Breadman doesn't start, unlike obviously Hutchinson's and Parsons. But give Parsons his credit, because the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders, or at least according to DeMarcus Lawrence, who said after the Cowboys' 30-10 win over the Jets, "You just witnessed the best defense in the world." And SB Nation's James Dater would certainly agree, saying this year it's different. It really truly is. We might only have a 2-game sample to go off of, but everything points to these 2023 Cowboys being the real deal. Okay, sure, they've looked dominant so far, but who were they playing? Destroying a team led by Danny Pennies isn't exactly the most shocking, nor is taking advantage of the New York Jets rolling with Zach Wilson. At the same time, though, I won't lie, the Cowboys are certainly a threat, and so are the 49ers for that matter, but is any of that really such a big surprise? Ultimately, it'll come down to, as it always does, how can Dak perform in the playoffs? But we're getting ahead of ourselves though. The early surprise is that the Tampa Bay Bucks are 2-0, and Baker Mayfield has played fairly well, throwing for over 300 yards against Chicago with 6 passes to Mike Evans for 171 total yards and a touchdown. And the Bucks defense also showed up, holding the Bears to 17 points while hitting Justin Fields 10 times, registering 6 sacks and 2 interceptions, including one very embarrassing one for Fields in the OC. see. So like Brandon Lee Gouton said, this will be a good test for the Eagles, but with some extra time to prepare, they should come out with a much faster start than they did the first 2 games of the season. Well, hopefully that's true, because the Bucs are going to pull out all the stops, like how they announced Rondé Barber's Hall of Fame induction celebration ceremony will be held at halftime versus the Eagles. Of course it will be, why not? Although if we were able to withstand Tom Brady Day on opening day, surely we can manage Rondé Barber. Should also get a much better look at all 10 of the listed injuries from week 2 and who will be available tomorrow, so we'll be sure to monitor that as well as what's going on behind enemy lines. This has been the Philly Special.